Well, good morning and welcome to our Wednesday morning devotion. You'll notice that we're Zooming it this morning. There's some travel difficulties in Winona, right, Michelle? Coming down
Yes.
the hill.
Yeah,
And
they've closed the road down our hill, and so I've got to go way around.
ah, and I always feel that, something good has to come out of something bad. And so I guess with COVID, something good that has come out of it are alternative ways that are fast and efficient to problems that we've had in the past where we would have said, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to get there. We're not going to be able to, do the taping. But because of COVID, we've been forced to look at alternative ways to have meetings and share information, and Zoom is a fast alternative. So
It is
there we go. Something bad out of something good. The good Lord.
something good out of something bad.
Yeah. So we're both at home, and Tracy's back to work, and so not able to join us during the day of our taping. So she will join us for next week, hopefully. So today's readings are from Jeremiah 11, verses 18 through 20. We have Psalm 54. We have James chapter 3, verse 13 through chapter 4, verse 3, and 7 and 8, kind of a conglomeration. I just kind of read through all of that.
Yeah.
And then our gospel for this coming Sunday is Mark chapter 9, verses 30 through 37. So I'll let you start with some thoughts that you have.
Yeah. Well, they're readings, I think, that are challenging. In my understanding of how they develop the lectionary is they choose the gospel reading and then they look for the Old Testament and the second reading and the Psalm to go with it. And so I was trying to figure out why they chose what they chose. And as I was reading through it, I heard a lot about power and the choices that we make of how we're going to live our daily lives. So the disciples in our gospel reading are arguing about who is the greatest at the same time that Jesus is talking about sacrifice and giving of yourself and all that. And then you look at the Old Testament reading, the Jeremiah reading, the chapters that have come before this reading that we have today have all been about the corruption of Israel, partly about Jeremiah not wanting to be a prophet, but then next it was about the corruption of Israel, and that they have gotten so far away from how God wants them to live. And then our second reading, of course, in James, he's talking about living in ways that are not consistent with how God wants us to live. And so for me, kind of what I took away from it was that I think in the United States, we believe in individualism so much that we've translated that to mean I can do what I want, when I want, whenever I want. And we have forgotten that we continue to live in community, and that we are in a community either with friends or with family, with city, state, nation, world, that we have forgotten about the fact that sometimes we choose to limit our choices or choose to limit what we do in order to be able to live at peace with each other. And we've forgotten that our actions have consequences, and that when we live selfishly or without honor or without respect for other people, there are consequences. And part of the consequences is the destruction of community. And so then there's conflict, and there's
fights and quarrels and what James does. And I guess I look, as you and I have been talking before we started taping, and even in our phone conversations when I've been saying, I just can't see a connection here. Some things that I have seen is on, talking about the consequences from living a negative life. Something that I saw in both Mark and James is how to live the good life.
Mhm.
Kind of the other way to look at that. And it makes me think, we had one of my daughter's friends and her little boy was here, and he just loves farming. And, nobody really loves farming anymore except my son and his people. And this little boy, wanted to go see my son's farm. And so I took him over there, and he just looked around, and he took his hands and he said, "I am living my best life." And it was so heartwarming. My son was just taken back because he said, "I didn't know any other child felt that way." That's how he had felt, but farming isn't always looked at as the best life or the good life. And that's what James talks about is, how do you live your good life? How do you live your best life? And it's, what James said in there is that if you look at that heavenly wisdom, it's you live your good life with things that you do in humility and doing things that, from that wisdom from heaven, that's peace loving and
Yes.
considerate
Mhm.
and full of mercy, and that produces good fruit. And, I always think that farming is, when you work with the land, you produce the good fruit. You are considerate of the land, and that's really, so I am living my best life. And
I
so
love that.
really, what does God tell us here? And then you look at Mark and at the end, and when he says the way, what whoever wants to be first must be last, and you welcome the children, because really children didn't have much honor back then. It was usually the men with a lot of, strength and power at war. And the way to gain honor is to receive those without honor. And that sometimes we look for honor and a good life through things. And really things don't have a lot to do with it.
Or even status. Mhm.
Yeah. And so really, I'm living my best life. I'm just standing here on a farm. What does that, as it from the child's mouth, tell me that, a simple life might be just really, that's just what God says is, selfish ambition, bitter envy. Those are all earthly things that we get into when we want all those things. But really, how do we get that good life? It's back to that humility and consideration and kindness.
Mhm. You're right. Yeah. I love that, I
Yeah,
mean, and to ask the question, what is my best life?
yeah,
I mean, to really pause and really grapple with that question,
yeah,
because too often we're so busy just kind of following what we normally do that we just don't take that time to reflect and to say, what is it truly that my heart desires? And how would I get there?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think, I think that you talked on Sunday, last Sunday, and in just such a wonderful message about, when these things happen in our community and in our church family, and you see sadness and and it's hard because, it's not only how do I live my good life, but in this very short period that it seems that I have, and um, I know I've been talking with my uncle a lot. I lost his brother, my uncle, and which was his brother. And so he's been calling often. And I think that happens with families, when you lose someone, then you want to keep in contact. And he called and he said, "How are you?" And I said, "Well, I'm living my best life. I woke up this morning and I looked over and Mark is here and he's breathing and I'm breathing and we are living our best life together. We're just so blessed." And I've just been feeling that way. I without working, I don't have a lot to offer, but I feel like it is a good life with God. And
And see, and then I try to take the concept of, living our good life and combining that with the idea of lament, and how do we live our good life even when we're in the midst of the depths, when we're hurting.
Yeah.
What does that mean when we're hurting and when the world has, or circumstances have beaten us up?
Yeah.
And what does that mean for us to be able to continue maybe to live the good life? That
Right.
it doesn't necessarily mean everything's always going to be wonderful for
No.
us.
And Jeremiah, as I did the research, we were talking about this, that some of the commentaries have called him the weeping prophet, and that he does lament a lot, and that he really begs God to, be kind to his people, even though they are not living a good life. And that
Exactly.
things, so I think, although, he's probably not the greatest model because he's asking for vengeance and, consequences, but that he keeps begging for his people, and that he keeps lamenting, and that God always listens to him, and that even when our best life is maybe not doing so good because of circumstances that happen out of our control, that we can still lament to God.
Yep.
We can still every day say, I am broken. I am suffering. I'm just having a hard time, and that he's going to listen.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that was kind of your message on Sunday. And that was just something that I've been holding on to this week. So
Yeah. And I think too, it was a big transition in my faith when I was able to accept that that our world is broken, and that God respects us enough that God's not going to treat us as puppets and come in and just manipulate everything and everyone, and control us and control others, and that we're going to continue to live in a broken world, and that God is big enough to handle our lament.
yes.
And our anger. Part of my lament was anger. I was so mad that our world couldn't be fixed. So
Maybe that's why they put these readings together, was from Jeremiah and from Psalms, where David is lamenting as well and asking God to destroy these people. That, James and Mark kind of tell us how to live our good life, but Jeremiah and Psalm says, but sometimes life isn't good, and we still need to tell God.
yeah.
So I didn't set my timer today, but I think
Uh-oh.
we are almost to the end of our time. We don't want to go. We could talk about this forever. So with that, we will close, and we hope that if you are feeling broken this week, that maybe some of these words can help your brokenness. And please feel free to tell God how broken you feel, and hopefully he will help make your life better with his love and his blessings. So with that, we hope you have a good week, and we will see you next week.
And please, if you have something that you would like us to pray for, please do let us know, and we would be happy to include that in our prayers, because we all have joys and sorrows. So God's blessings.
Bye.